All right, hello everybody. Welcome to part two of my Silk Road Mountain Race overview. So I'm just going to talk about a bunch of decisions I made in terms of preparing for the Silk Road Mountain Race and going through it. So part one was about my bike setup, my bolt cutter, Peacemaker, and the bag system I used, how I packed it. So if you're interested in that, feel free to take a look at part one. This is part two about my sleeping system, and then I'm going to be talking about other things in other portions, other parts, whether it be my lighting setup, electronics, clothing, that type of stuff. So if you have any specific questions about the Silk Road Mountain Race, feel free to ask me, and I can follow up with those questions. So my sleep setup for the Silk Road Mountain Race. Real quick, I'm just going to go over the different options that I typically like to use for sleep setups, and then what I ended up actually choosing for the Silk Road Mountain Race. So when I'm bike packing with friends, just like a simple overnighter, comfort's the focus. I'm not really worrying about speed, minimal sleep. If I'm racing, I'm gonna take the Big Agnes Fly Creek. This is the HV UL2. So two person, myself and my girlfriend also will take this when we're bike packing together. This is an awesome, really quick tent to put up. Pretty lightweight. It'll actually attach to the front bars of the bike. So I love this for just bike packing with friends, or it's just a fun trip. Not worried about speed or weight. But did not take this for Silk Road Mountain Race. And a lot of people did use tents, which makes sense because this offers a ton of shelter. And ultimately they are pretty quick to unpack and pack up. But I really like bivvies, and for all of the races that I've done, I've always used a bivvy. So that's why I ended up going with a slightly lighter weight setup via a bivvy. So great option. I didn't use it. Gonna throw it down there. Now, the lighter weight option, this is a Soul Escape bivvy, and this is typically what I use for shorter races, whether it's 2 to 3 days, ranging from 250 miles to 400 miles. If I'm gonna be trying to ride through the night but want an option if I need some shelter, then I'll bring the Soul Escape bivvy. Super lightweight, relatively packable. Pretty darn packable. The one downfall is, while it's water repellent, it's not totally water resistant because it just closes up by a drawstring, and it has a zipper that's not waterproof. So not the best option if you're really needing some solid shelter. Didn't bring that with me. What I did bring was an Outdoor Research Alpine bivvy. So this is fully Gore-Tex, and seam sealed. It has a bug netting clamshell zipper, and then like a full zipper if I need to fully waterproof myself. Just over a pound, I believe. I forget the specific weight specifications, and it has a hoop as well that I can use to kind of have it over my face, so the bivvy is not like sitting on my face. However, I lost the poles for that, so I just went with this bivvy because lightweight, packable, but really solid shelter if I needed it, if it was really rainy. And then I carried it on the front of my bike with this here, which is this is a custom-made Dyneema fabric dry bag, and so I made it specifically to fit the bivvy, along with a pair of wool socks, and then a pair of really small slippers. I'll show you all that in a moment. We're gonna go outside and I'm gonna lay out the whole setup, but I just wanted to go over the options that I ended up choosing first. So this was on the front with the Alpine bivvy. I did not take the stuff sack. I just took the bivvy out of the stuff sack, used this as the stuff sack. And then I kept my sleeping bag, which is a Sea to Summit Spark, I believe Spark 2, which is a 28 degree Fahrenheit or -2 degrees Celsius. I brought this sleeping bag and put it in my saddlebag. So I kept the compression sack with this. This is just the packing bag. I'll show the compression sack. Let's see. So this is the compression sack it comes with. And this is awesome to just increase the packability of the sleeping bag. Since it's down, it does get quite puffy, and which is amazing. It's got really, really good loft for such a light bag. But you still want that packability because this is a 12-day race and I need to pack a lot of things. So having the compression stuff sack was awesome for the sleeping bag. Now, an emergency blanket is always my go-to. No matter what, I always have something like this in my setup when I'm bike packing with friends during a race. I just always have an emergency blanket with me. It's great for, you know, a emergency shelter, of course, but it also doubles as a ground cloth, which is what I used it for the Silk Road Mountain Race. I like using it as a ground cloth because I didn't always use my bivy. If I was just going to sleep really quickly, maybe it was like an hour, hour and a half, then I just whip out this as the ground cloth and pull this out of my saddlebag and just lay down on this. So I wouldn't have to worry about the sleeping bag getting dirty, getting, you know, ruined from sleeping on like sticks, rocks, that type of stuff, because I had a little bit of protection. But awesome option just to, you know, protect the items, the bivy, the sleeping bag, and then have another form of mild insulation against the ground. Obviously, it's not going to really have that much, but you know, it might radiate the heat back to you a little bit. But that's pretty much all I used this for. It was a backup in case I needed extra shelter, but essentially it was just a ground cloth when I needed it. My pillow is a Climate ultralight pillow. This was, I think they're pretty cheap, maybe $20, $25. There are some pillows that are just ridiculously expensive, and it's not insulated or anything, but very, you know, very tiny, really packable. I didn't have the stuff sack with it because it's just one extra thing. So all I did was, you know, take it out and stuff it in here with my bivy, or I kept it in the saddlebag with my sleeping bag. It just lived somewhere. I knew where, when I was pulling out my sleeping gear, that I'd find it. So awesome to have as just like a little comfort thing. I did bring this Sea to Summit, let's see, ultralight insulated sleeping pad. So this is insulated, really good 3 to 4 season sleeping pad. I love this for more like fall, winter bike packing, especially when I'm using a tent. If it's going to be cold, I need some extra insulation. This is awesome. Great for comfort, great for long nights of sleep. I brought it just in case I wanted to use it during the race, but I ended up not using it. I did use it one night before the race because I did a ride out to, I think it was about 8,000 feet of elevation, 9,000 feet of elevation. I think it was the night before the start of the race, just to do a little bit of acclimatization. So I used this and then the bivy in my sleeping bag. But for the race, I just chose to go with a lighter option, which is, I'm going to get this off the table. I didn't use it. A great option. A lot of people did use insulated sleeping pads, which is totally understandable because there were nights where it definitely got below freezing, but I just chose not to. I wanted to go with a more lighter weight option. limit the amount of things that I needed to kind of pack up to focus on speed. So that was my decision. I would stick with it. I don't think I would bring this if I was to do the Silk Road Mountain Race again. I was fine with the options that I chose. So this is a 1/4 inch closed cell foam pad. I think I bought it from Gossamer Gear. And it is cut to about torso size. So very minimal. This kind of just, I had it rolled up and tucked with my bivvy on the front of my bike. So when I decided that I wanted to use it, if it was going to be if it was going to be cold at night, I need a little bit of extra insulation, or if it was going to, or if the terrain I was on was like a little rocky, a little uncomfortable, then I used this. I didn't use it all the time. A lot of the times for shorter races, I haven't used any sleeping pads. And for longer ones, I did Utah Mixed Epic in 2020. That was, I believe, roughly 750 miles. I used something like this, and I was okay with it. So I decided to give it a shot during the Silk Road Mountain Race, and yeah, I was fine with it. There were some nights where I actually slept through my alarm and had 5 to 6 hours of sleep versus the 2 to 3 hours that I was planning on. The sleep setup that I chose didn't really, even though it was pretty minimal and lightweight, it never really hindered my ability to sleep comfortably. Now the thing is, it is a very, yeah, it is a minimal setup. It's focused on speed, relatively limited shelter. It's hard to, you don't really have the ability to like change in the bivvy. You kind of do, but it's difficult. So there are some trade-offs with this versus having a tent, because obviously a tent's going to be a lot easier to kind of keep your gear inside, keep everything kind of dry, change, be comfortable. But this worked out for me. I was happy with the setup, and yeah, I don't think I'd change anything. So let's go outside and I will show you exactly what I did to lay out this gear when it was time to set up camp. Here are the bags. Here's the setup. Not on a bike. But I just wanted to give a little overview of what it looks like, what this whole sleeping setup looks like in the field while I'm actually getting it set up. So saddlebag, I'll obviously be on the back of the bike. This will hold the sleeping bag and my warm clothes. And then my front pack, this holds the bivvy, and then the some spare socks and slippers, and then the pad. All right, so let's see what this looks like. I'll go through two configurations or variations, which is essentially using the bivvy and not using the bivvy, because I'd use the bivvy depending on the weather and depending on the temperature, because the bivvy makes it a little bit warmer to sleep in, but at the same time takes a little bit more time to pull it out and get things set up. So I decided when and where I ended up wanting to use the bivvy. All right, so first of all, go through the pack, and there are two options I have for a shirt. I typically take out my whatever jersey and whatever layers I'm wearing. I'm gonna take those off because they're probably a little bit sweaty. So I just want those to kind of get some time to breathe and air out. What I do is I'll take them off and I'll stick them at the bottom of my sleeping bag, so that some of the warmth down there, well, actually on the bottom of the sleeping bag or under me, depending on how wet they are, just to kind of warm them up a little bit. The two layers, top layers, are a Senchi Designs hoodie Really nice lightweight fleece. This is, I think, roughly 6 ounces. So if it's not too cold, if I'm not too high, if I wasn't too high up and it wasn't going to be too cold, I'd rock this. Or I just wouldn't rock a top layer. I'd just go into the sleeping bag. And if it was going to be cold, I would rock this. So there were a couple nights where I was going through a mountain pass and it was just getting too late. I was having a rough time riding through the night. So I've got my big Agnes Puffy, and then I'd throw this on. Then, similarly with a bottom layer, I have my REI tights, and no matter what, taking off the bib shorts, letting those dry, keeping them in the sleeping bag to keep them warm, to keep them protected, and then depending on the temperature, I would throw these on, or I would just not have anything on and be in the sleeping bag, let things air out. Always got to let the body air dry. Now, if I'm not using the bivy, this is my my layer on the ground, because no matter what, I want to protect the sleeping bag from whatever's on the ground, whether it's pine needles, rocks, that type of stuff. So if I'm not using the bivy now, we'll say I'm not, I'm just gonna throw this out. So boom, throw it on the ground, and that way I've got a spot to keep the sleeping bag safe. Now, so always stored it in here, and then separate from the bivy, primarily because the bivy will get wet, it'll get condensation, and I like keeping the bivy separate from all of my gear in here, which is like more my warm clothes and stuff, so it's got its own dry bag that I keep it in. Now, I also keep this climate pillow, super lightweight. Takes 3 or 4 breaths to get it inflated, and it was super cheap. Not insulated or anything, but does the job. So, sleeping bag is the Sea to Summit Spark, 28 degrees. Pull it out, unzip, and get in. Take off the shoes. Now, depending on, oh yeah, one other thing I forgot, the pad. So the nice thing about this is whether I'm using the bivy or not, I can just pull it out of the front spot. So I've got it to use, and I'll just slip it under me between, or actually no, I'd put it under the Mylar blanket, just so that I've still got the heat retention of the, or not retention, but reflection of the Mylar blanket. But honestly, some nights I didn't use this because I was just trying to be really quick. Just, be in and out within 90 minutes to 2 hours. That was very rare. But yeah, as long as, a big part of your sleeping situation is also going to be your location choice. Something like this, a little rocky bed, not ideal, but I've slept on places like this. But as long as it's not terribly cold, sometimes I didn't even use the foam pad. But this is just naturally another layer of insulation to help you sleep. Another thing is you could use some more insulation and pack it in your sleeping bag under you to if you're getting cold. All right, so this is one setup. With my shoes, again, depending on the weather, I would like to, at the very least, I try to kind of like keep them safe from condensation, moisture, I'd cover them in this. On really cold nights, and depending on how wet they were, I'd bring them inside the bivvy with me. Not inside the sleeping bag, but just inside the bivvy to kind of keep them warm. There was one night where I was too lazy, took my shoes off, set them here, just set my helmet on top of them. And I think this was one of the passes, I forget what pass it was, but I was at about roughly 11,000 feet. Woke up 90 minutes later, too cold, couldn't sleep too long, and my shoes were frozen. The BOA laces were a little bit stuck because they had frost in them, so I just took them, set them in my sleeping bag, and just waited a little bit for them to heat up, and then got rolling once they were functional. Alright, so moving on. If I'm running bivvy, another thing, a separate set of wool socks. I always kept these in the dry bag. These were purely for sleeping. I had a set of wool socks for riding. These are just like some generic Columbia wool socks. So I had a separate set of thicker wool socks for riding, but because of the conditions, the amount of like water, little like streams and ravines we were riding through, no matter what, you're gonna have wet feet. So it's always important to have a warm pair of socks that you're never gonna wear when you're riding, at least in my opinion, because for me, my extremities are one of the things that, having cold extremities, and mine get cold pretty easy. They don't have the best circulation. That's one of the worst things that can happen to you, in terms of mindset, in terms of being able to get sleep, in terms of being able to keep moving. So yeah, always have a warm set of socks. Next thing, thank you to Turkish Airlines for these nice little slippers. If I needed a break from my cycling shoes, I had these guys. Definitely not the most secure, but it was something to wear while I wasn't wearing my cycling shoes, and protected my socks, protected my feet a little bit. So this was kind of like my camp shoe or my camp slipper. They're amazing because they're like, I haven't weighed these things, but I'm guessing no more than like 2 or 3 ounces total. Really packable. Like I said, I just got them in my little like toiletry kit from my flight out to Kyrgyzstan via Turkish Airlines, and I was like, hey, this is an awesome option for some camping shoes, slippers. All right, the bivvy. Now, oh, I guess I already had my my pillow in here, so I have 2 of them. Forgot to take one out for filming. Now the bivvy, outdoor research, alpine bivvy, fully Gore-Tex, and there were some nights where it was raining while I was setting up my my sleeping situation. So what I did in those instances was first take out the bivvy, unroll the bivvy, and then take out the sleeping bag compression sack and stick it in the bivvy and open it inside the bivvy. Minimize the chances of getting the down sleeping bag wet as much as possible. It is the Sea to Summit Spark. Here's the Sea to Summit Spark 28 degrees, Spark 2. So it is hydrophobic down, which means it will repel water a little bit, but you just don't want to chance it. The last thing you want to deal with is a soaked
down sleeping bag. I didn't really have to deal with it too much. Naturally, in a bivvy, you are going to perspire a bit more than in a tent, and that did happen with me. So, frankly, I like sleeping in bivvies. It's a very personal choice, but I like the ease and simplicity of them. It's really, really quick to pack and unpack. As I'd mentioned, shoes would just go right in here with me. Keep them safe. My socks that I was wearing that day, I just throw them in as well. Obviously, you don't want anything in here that's wet. So if I had wet socks, if my clothes that I was wearing, bibs, that type of stuff, were wet, I would just stick them under me, not around my core, but under my legs. This is a period of 2 to 6 hours where you have the opportunity to kind of like let your body heat do work for you. So keeping clothes warm, slightly drying clothes. If it seemed like it was going to be a precipitation-free night, then sometimes I would just chance it and leave my jersey hanging on my bike so it got some airflow, that type of stuff. So, just kind of play it by ear in terms of what the weather looks like. Yeah. So this is the setup. Quite comfy. I will say, if you own one of these bivvies, you will notice I do not have the poles. This bivvy does have poles that fit here, so it stays up like this, and I'm not sure where they are. I lost them, so I didn't bring them. If I had them, I don't think I would have brought them anyways, because I don't really use them in general. What I like to do is just kind of like close it over me and zip up partially. I don't really feel claustrophobic without the poles, so this is what I like. Now, if it was a situation where I was just like camping and planning on sleeping a full 8 hours, then I would bring the poles just for a little bit more comfort, keep the bivvy off your face. When I'm racing, I don't really care as much. All right, so this is the setup.
All right, so I hope that was informative. Just a little overview on the sleep system that I ended up choosing. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions. I'll have a link to the gear that I used in the caption, so feel free to take a look at that. And again, if you have any questions about the setup that I used, if you have questions on the type of setup that you're interested in, feel free to let me know. I will say, I may have already said it, but definitely take the time to figure out what works for you, because I've had experience in numerous races and bikepacking trips with friends utilizing this setup specifically, knowing that it works for me, especially for multi-day events. So make sure whatever you choose to use, especially in something as long as the Silk Road Mountain Race, it's something that you're accustomed to, that you're comfortable with, that will keep you protected. Because for me, I ended up sleeping outside every single night of the race. I didn't end up using a guest house at all. And while I am okay with that decision, I had the equipment to be able to do so. I would recommend taking a couple nights in a guest house just to do like a full recharge with your, you know, your batteries, mentally, emotionally, just having that relaxation. Yeah, don't rely on your system for the whole trip. I think it's, you know, important to have something that's gonna take you the whole way, but to be able to make use of the other options, other forms of shelter like guest houses is really helpful. So yeah, hopefully that was informative, and feel free to like and subscribe. And then I've got more parts of the series coming out, talking about my electronics, the clothing that I use. So yeah, thanks for watching.